At 0345 hours, the dim glow of the monitor screens inside the operations center at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar cut through the artificial hush. Staff Sergeant Marcus Delaney leaned over his console, his eyes locked onto a grainy feed from an MQ-9 Reaper circling silently above the western outskirts of Al Hudaydah, Yemen. For weeks, satellite imagery and intercepted communications had pointed to unusual movement near an abandoned industrial compound just a few kilometers inland from the Red Sea. Now, infrared signatures showed trucks unloading cargo into makeshift hangars, guards posted at perimeter checkpoints, and unusually disciplined foot traffic, all telltale signs that this wasn't just a weapons depot. Across the room, Colonel Alicia Brandt, commander of Joint Task Force Sentinel, reviewed a brief marked Priority Target Tier 1. She had commanded drone strikes before, each with its own moral weight, each calculated with absolute precision. But this one felt different. It wasn't just the uptick in Houthi attacks or the threat to regional allies. Something about the pace of activity around the compound didn't sit right with her. The pressure was mounting. Just days ago, a Saudi-flagged oil tanker had narrowly escaped a missile hit, and commercial vessels now diverted hundreds of miles to avoid Red Sea lanes. The White House had made it clear. De-escalation was ideal, but deterrence was non-negotiable. Intelligence reports claimed the site housed a Houthi command node linked directly to drone launches that had harassed U.S. and allied ships. Some chatter even hinted that Iranian operatives were on site coordinating logistics and electronic warfare training. It wasn't verified, but time wasn't a luxury they could afford. Delaney's voice came through the intercom, steady but with an edge. Target confirmed. 3 technical vehicles, heavy cargo offloading, estimated 15+ personnel in the zone. Colonel Brandt hesitated. The rules of engagement were strict. No strike unless the target was verified hostile, but ambiguous intelligence blurred the lines. She looked at the civilian risk overlay. Moderate. The window of opportunity was narrowing. If the trucks dispersed, they might lose the entire operation. Her hand hovered above the comm. Execute strike package. Confirm weapon release. Roger that, Colonel. Coordinates locked. Delaney's fingers flew over the controls. The drone adjusted altitude, its Hellfire missile aligning with surgical precision. Missile away! On the monitor, a flash lit up the compound. Then dust, flame, debris. Personnel scattered, some never made it past the blast wave. The team in the command center watched in silence. No cheering, no fist pumps. Just the cold finality of a job executed. A second feed from a surveillance satellite confirmed significant structural damage, multiple secondary explosions. The analysts nodded. Looks like an ammo cache. Big one muttered. Colonel Brandt leaned back, her mind already racing through the next steps. Press briefings, after-action reviews, political fallout. She turned to Delaney. Maintain surveillance. We need to know what moves and where it goes next. But before the data could be compiled, something unexpected happened. From the corner of the compound, a previously unmarked vehicle sped away, kicking up dust. 2 individuals staggered from a shattered office, one in military fatigues, the other in civilian attire. Distinctly not local. The drone's zoom function struggled with the heat distortion, but it was enough. The taller man was wearing a vest with an IRGC patch, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Colonel Brandt's stomach dropped. Pause footage. Get that frozen frame to analysis. Now. Delaney's hands were already moving, capturing stills, pushing them through encrypted transmission to Central Command. The air in the room grew dense. They hadn't just hit a Houthi stronghold, they might have targeted Iranian personnel, possibly without full clearance. The implications were seismic. Tehran had drawn red lines before, but if this was confirmed, the retaliatory spiral could reach U.S. forces in Iraq, Syria, or worse, spark a regional flashpoint that couldn't be contained. Brant stepped out of the operations room and into the hallway, her fingers already dialing the direct line to Washington. Behind her, Delaney stared at the frozen frame on the screen. He didn't say anything, but in his gut, he knew this wasn't over. The silence after the strike had felt wrong. Not victorious, but eerie, like the calm before a bigger, darker storm. And somewhere over the Red Sea, the MQ-9 circled alone, its sensors scanning the smoldering ruins below. Inside the Pentagon's National Military Command Center, the air buzzed with tension as new intelligence streamed in by the hour. Rear Admiral James Hollis stood over a polished mahogany table, his fingers pressed tightly against a folder marked Code Black, Contingency Evaluation. Beside him, his senior advisor, Commander Priya Mehta, reviewed satellite telemetry and communications intercepts that confirmed what no one in the room wanted to believe. The drone strike had eliminated not only Houthi assets, but likely 2 operatives tied to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Worse yet, Iranian state media had caught wind of the incident and was already broadcasting grainy footage of the aftermath, framed as an unprovoked U.S. aggression on foreign soil. The story was shifting fast, and the window to control the narrative was closing. For Hollis, this wasn't just another battlefield miscalculation. It was a potential geopolitical flashpoint. He had spent decades navigating the murky waters of military escalation, but rarely had he seen the fuse light so quickly. "We need to get ahead of this before Tehran spins it into a pretext for retaliation," he said grimly, not bothering to mask the fatigue in his voice. Mehta responded without looking up. "They already are, sir. Our signals teams picked up coordinated messaging from multiple IRGC-linked networks. They're laying groundwork for a response. It's not a question of if, it's when and where." The Admiral nodded, then turned toward the digital wall map as it shifted to a real-time feed of the Gulf of Aden. Several red blips indicated incoming drone activity, likely reconnaissance, possibly even a test run for something larger. He tapped a nearby intercom and requested immediate communication with the Fifth Fleet. A pattern was emerging, and if history had taught them anything, it was that Houthi retaliation wouldn't be surgical. It would be theatrical, aimed at international shipping, American installations, or even soft diplomatic targets. Meanwhile, in Djibouti, aboard the USS Paul Hamilton, a guided missile destroyer on high alert, Lieutenant Commander Avery Shaw adjusted her binoculars and scanned the horizon for irregular silhouettes. She had served through tense standoffs before, but the crew could feel this was different. Intel briefings had warned of a spike in asymmetric threats: small boats, disguised fishing vessels, and kamikaze drones launched from modified cargo ships. The usual cat-and-mouse game had evolved into a battlefield of layered deception. Shaw's radio crackled to life. "Command to all stations. Maintain alert posture. Increased likelihood of retaliatory drone swarm. All CIWS systems to stand by." Back in Qatar, Colonel Alicia Brant stood beside Sergeant Delaney, who was reviewing fresh ISR data from the impact site. A cluster of heat signatures had emerged 20 miles northeast of the blast zone. Another facility, likely connected, and much larger. But that wasn't what chilled her. The signals intercepted from this new location weren't just encrypted. They bore the hallmarks of IRGC communications protocols. In short, the drone strike may have blown open more than just a weapons cache. It might have inadvertently uncovered a deeper Iranian logistics network operating inside Yemen under Houthi cover. Brant's voice was calm but deliberate. "Send everything to CENTCOM. Prioritize human. We need eyes on that second site before we even think about another strike." She glanced at the live feed from the USS Paul Hamilton, a split screen showing its phalanx CIWS spinning up in anticipation. Her thoughts raced. What if this second compound was bait? What if the next attack wasn't coming from Yemen at all? In Tehran, state television aired footage of solemn-faced clerics condemning U.S. actions, while banners behind them flashed blood-red graphics of drone wreckage and fire. The Iranian Foreign Ministry summoned Swiss diplomats, the official channel between Tehran and Washington, to issue a formal protest. It was theater, yes, but the kind that precedes real moves on the chessboard. Across the ocean, in a secure conference room beneath the White House, the president's national security team debated options: escalate and risk a broader war, or back down and appear weak. The president listened silently as advisors made their cases. One insisted that showing restraint would protect regional allies. Another argued that projecting strength would force Tehran back into the shadows. Ultimately, all eyes turned to a single figure: General Reuben Castle, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He spoke softly but with the clarity of a man who had seen too many wars spiral out of control. "We started this with a tactical strike, but we're on the edge of a strategic crisis," Castle said. "This isn't just about the Houthis anymore. We need to make damn sure we're not walking into a trap." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Shaw issued new orders aboard the USS Paul Hamilton. Patrol drones were launched, and the radar systems swept wider arcs than before. Her crew was alert, eyes trained on every anomaly in the water or sky. They didn't know exactly what retaliation would look like, but they knew it was coming. And far above the chaos, circling silently in the stratosphere, another MQ-9 drone locked onto a heat trail moving across the Yemeni desert, its infrared signature indicating a vehicle convoy, destination unknown. Colonel Brandt stared at the screen, her hand hovering again over the authorization control. Everyone was watching, everyone was guessing, but no one was in control anymore. Darkness cloaked the Arabian Sea, broken only by the distant glow of the USS Paul Hamilton's running lights and the hum of its engines slicing through moonlit waves. Below deck, in the ship's Combat Information Center, Lieutenant Commander Avery Shaw stood motionless before a wall of monitors, her jaw clenched as a fresh feed streamed in from a recon drone. The grainy video showed 3 fast-moving vessels leaving the Yemeni coastline, small, low-profile boats designed to evade radar. One of them emitted an irregular thermal signature. It wasn't just a fishing boat. It was packed with explosives. Shaw didn't wait. "Condition 1, all hands to battle stations. Notify 5th Fleet. We may have a VBIED swarm inbound." Alarms pierced the calm. On deck, sailors snapped into motion, rotating the 25mm autocannons, prepping the Phalanx CIWS, and loading countermeasures. The destroyer's silhouette became a fortress, bristling with steel and anticipation. Miles away, in CENTCOM's operations hub, Colonel Alicia Brandt reviewed the data relayed by Shaw's team. The convoy, previously identified from the drone strike, had scattered, suggesting a tactical shift, possibly an attempt to divide and stretch U.S. response assets. Worse, cyber analysts intercepted digital chatter pointing to a synchronized attack, naval, cyber, and drone-based, meant to overwhelm defenses. Brandt's mind raced. They had struck a Houthi base expecting a localized retaliation, but what unfolded was a coordinated Iranian proxy response. This wasn't revenge, it was escalation. "Patch me through to Shaw," she ordered. Seconds later, the line connected. "Commander, we're seeing signs of a broader operation. Don't treat this as a one-off. Assume layered contact, boats, drones, maybe even land-based missiles. The enemy's testing our perimeter." Shaw didn't blink. "Understood. We'll hold the line." Above them, a Triton surveillance drone loitered at altitude, capturing thermal images and tracking the hostile boats. As the vessels closed to within 12 miles, a second set of drones appeared on radar, smaller, airborne, flying in a V formation. Suicide drones. The tactics were textbook Iranian asymmetric warfare: swarm, saturate, exploit weak points. The bridge of the USS Paul Hamilton erupted into a storm of voice commands. Target acquired, 11 o'clock, designate hostile. CIWS online, firing sequence engaged. The first burst of fire tore across the sky, shredding one drone mid-air in a shower of sparks. But the others zigzagged through the onslaught, flying low and fast. At the same time, the three boats altered course, fanning out, forcing the ship's gunners to split their attention. Inside the combat center, Shaw barked, "Deploy SEARAM, focus fire on port side boat, helm, evasive pattern Delta." The ship lurched as countermeasures fired, chaff glittering like fireflies under starlight. Explosions rocked the ocean. Two of the drones neutralized. One of the boats detonated prematurely from a lucky shot. But one drone and one boat pressed on. Shaw gritted her teeth. "CIWS, take the last drone. Mark the boat for precision fire." A rhythmic whir signaled the Gatling gun's final spin as tungsten shells chewed through the remaining drone just seconds before impact. A heartbeat later, the deck gun thundered, scoring a direct hit on the final boat, which exploded in a plume of orange and black, sending shockwaves across the sea. Silence fell. Brief, heavy, electric. Then the all-clear was sounded. On the bridge, sailors cheered, some clapping, others slumping with exhaustion. But Shaw remained still, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "This wasn't the end," she said quietly. "This was the beginning." Elsewhere, Colonel Brandt took a deep breath. The battle was won, but the war had shifted. The U.S. had shown its teeth, and now the whole region was watching. Tehran would take notes. The Houthis would regroup. But the Navy had held firm, and for now, deterrence was alive. As morning broke over the Gulf, the USS Paul Hamilton steamed forward under a blood-orange sky. Above it, a drone circled silently, always watching, always waiting. The hammer had dropped, but the echo had only just begun.